The Memphis Grizzlies have a very interesting schedule for the 2026-2027 season. I'm going to dive into exactly what I find most intriguing on this edition of the show. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host for this edition of the show, Joe Mullinax. Very happy to be with you. Very excited to talk about the NBA 2K rankings shunning the Memphis Grizzlies, at least in the top 100. Also looking forward to discussing what you shouldn't be aggregating when it's such a piss-poor report, pardon my language, but I'm going to get fired up at the end of the show. Talk more about that later. Again, I'm Joe Mullinax. No to Michael Cole on this edition of the show. We'll be back together for our middle of the week podcast. Very excited about that. Very excited to be here with you today, of course, talking Grizzlies basketball. And DeMichael did a phenomenal job breaking down a lot of the strengths and weaknesses, the highs and lows of the Memphis Grizzlies 2026-2027 schedule on Friday. If you missed that episode, make sure you're going back and checking it out. I'm only going to have a brief amount of time here to give some of my thoughts, but I did want to make sure that I had an opportunity to chime in between DeMichael's great reporting and podcasting on the last show and Rob Fisher at The Fish Nation on X, Memphis Grizzlies sideline reporter, of course. And he's a part of Grind City Media. He does a great job breaking down the schedule as well each and every year. Shout out to Fish. I think he pointed out lots of interesting things. And I'm going to start out with what is easily, to me, the most fascinating part of this schedule. One of the longest homestands in the NBA this year belongs to the Memphis Grizzlies. 8-game homestand in February. My birthday month. Shout out to your boy Joe Mullinax turning 40 in February. Maybe I should just take a month off from work and hang out in Memphis for my birthday and catch a lot of good Grizzlies basketball. This homestand will start off with the Philadelphia 76ers. That, of course, is LeBron and company, Jaylen Brown and crew coming to town. Then you have the very interesting back-to-back return of Ja Morant to Memphis, with the Portland Trail Blazers playing 2 games back-to-back there. Then Orlando with Desmond Bane. The Clippers, maybe less interesting, depending on how things go with the Kawhi allegations and investigation. The New York Knicks come to town as the champions. The San Antonio Spurs, the Western Conference champions. And then, of course, the Boston Celtics. Holy crap. I think that is one of the pound-for-pound most interesting homestands, not just this season, but in Memphis Grizzlies history. There are so many different angles to that. The end of one era with LeBron James, his last season or 2 in the NBA. Ja starting a new era in Portland and all the history there. Dez finally getting the chance to come back to Memphis himself after the Magic and Grizzlies games, of course, last year were played overseas. There is so much that's going on in that homestand. And if you are an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, you know when I'm breaking down a schedule, I like to take a look at how much travel is involved. And I know that DeMichael talked a little bit about that on our last episode as well. But the thing that's most important to me that I want to reiterate in this February stretch is the Memphis Grizzlies will literally only have to play in 4 cities in the entire month of February. They're in Milwaukee on February 1st, and they're in Memphis from February 3rd until February 18th. Then it's the All-Star break, folks. So the Grizzlies will go to San Antonio on February 26th, and they'll play the Spurs in Austin, Texas, one of the Spurs roadshow games that they do. And then the second night of the back-to-back will be a Saturday night against the Sacramento Kings in Memphis, and that's the end of the month of February. So that's what? 4 cities, including Memphis, Tennessee, if you want to count it 5 for the travel, in a whole month. That month is pivotal for the Memphis Grizzlies, not just because of what I like to talk about in the past of being able to practice and sleep in your own bed and those sorts of things. It's also important in terms of the trade deadline. We got to remember it's important in terms of that All-Star break. You would hope that Cameron Boozer will be a part of the All-Star festivities, at least in the Rising Stars conversation. Cedric Coward as well, of course. That is a very significant month on this schedule for the Grizzlies, especially going into a season where we're not entirely sure what it's going to be. Could the Grizzlies be flirting with 30 wins and outside of the play-in? Yeah, that's possible. Could the Grizzlies be flirting with 40 wins and be in the play-in conversation? Yes. All of those scenarios are possible at this point. I am not sure what the team's going to be. Neither are you. We have our hopes and our dreams and our fears and our nightmares. But the reality of the situation is you look at that February stretch, we're going to learn a lot about Jeremy Grant's future with the team, Ty Jerome's future with the team, how the team perceives themselves in this first year of the rebuild, how they make their maneuvers and their transactions, how they guarantee money, how they move around pieces. There's going to be so much to keep an eye on in that month of February. I think that is arguably the most important season coming up for the Grizzlies. I, of course, would not be able to let this segment go without talking about the return of the Grizzlies on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It should be that way. They 100% should always have a home game on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. They're playing the Houston Rockets. I know Michael talked about that on Friday. That's extremely important, not just for the organization, but of course, the city at large. That matters a lot to me. I'm a big fan of the Grizzlies taking on the Rockets on Martin Luther King Day. Very intrigued to see how things play out in terms of road trips. Very short road trips this year, only 4-game road trips twice. That's not that long at all, to be honest with you. I think that matters a heck of a lot. And that allows for the team. Of course, those trips are important for continuity. They're important. That California road trip in particular is a chance for them to hang out together, be around each other, all those sorts of things. That matters. That carries weight. But that homestand in February just knocks the socks off of all the road trip possibilities in terms of concerns for me. That February run is just seismic in terms of what the Grizzlies can do, will do. We will learn a lot about the franchise and the team moving forward by the end of that month of February. And I also am intrigued by the fact that the Grizzlies have lost so much national television hype. I know DeMichael talked about that a lot on our last edition of the show. I could care less personally. First off, you have to remember those games get flexed, right? So they are currently scheduled for 2 national television games. That, of course, can change. The 2 national television games, of course, being the Martin Luther King Day game in January, and then the game with Ja returning on February 6th, which very predictable. I believe I predicted that last week, that the Ja Morant return to Memphis would be a national televised game. The Grizzlies will likely get more games added. The better you play, the more likely it is that you will have more nationally televised games. Who is the star of the Memphis Grizzlies right now? Cameron Boozer, a rookie, the guy that's going to be the youngest player in the league. Not Ty Jerome, not Jeremy Grant, not Cedric Howard, not Zach Edey. But that's the starting 5, right? Boozer, Edey, Grant, Coward, Jerome. At least that's who I think the starting 5 should be. Would you put that team on national television more than twice? I get it, man. The NBA is a business, and they are trying to get every last ounce of the LeBron James journey. They are trying to squeeze every bit of the California team fandom, the Lakers and the Warriors. They are going to lean into the fact that the Knicks, the New York Knickerbockers, are one of the best franchises in the sport now with a NBA championship that they are just coming off of. So Memphis, being one of, if not the smallest market in the NBA, without any certified star power, again, for all the criticisms of Ja Morant and how that era ended, Ja Morant's a star, superstar when he's right. The Grizzlies don't have that guy anymore. So should you be surprised? No. Should you be disappointed? In my opinion, no, because that means you get the best duo, local broadcasting, Pete Pranica, Brevin Knight, more often than you did last season, which to me holds significant value because I like Pete and I like Brevin, 2 guys that we've had on various podcasts in the past over the course of my podcasting and blogging career. So I like those guys. I want to hear them more. And shout out to Rob Fisher as well. So if you missed the episode with DeMichael doing a more extensive breakdown, the strengths, the weaknesses, toughest stretches, by all means, go and check out our previous edition of the show. After you check out this one, I wanted to make sure I gave my 2 cents. To me, that February, I'm fascinated by the month of February. That really is just a significant stretch there for the team to figure out just what they are, right? Obviously, they'll have played a lot of games before February. Maybe it'll be pretty clear by that point. My anticipation is the team will start relatively slow, and they're going to improve, and they're going to get better. and they're going to get into that stretch. Maybe they're 5 or 6 games under 500 going into February. What happens if they go 6-2 at home and they're 2 games under 500 by the trade deadline around that time? What do you do if you are the Memphis Grizzlies? What do you do if you're Zach Kleiman? To me, that's fascinating. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. What are you most intrigued by from the Grizzlies schedule? When we come back here on the show, we are going to talk about the fact that there are no Memphis Grizzlies in the NBA 2K27 Top 100. Should we be bothered by that? Let's check it out next. Stick around. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Indeed. When in workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed-sponsored jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and locations, so less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. If you don't believe me, in the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. The biggest difference isn't somebody doing more work in any successful organization. It's having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run more smoothly, whether it's Zach Kleiman in the front office, Tomas Isolo on the court as the head coach, and everyone in between. You need people that are on the same page, figuring out what needs to get done. That's why hiring qualified people matters so much. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Grizzlies. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Go and check them out today. So NBA 2K, and again, shout out to Sleeper Memphis helping us out here in the dog days of August with that basketball content. At Sleeper Memphis on X, Sleeper Grizzlies, the Memphis Grizzlies are currently the only team with 0 players in the 2K27 Top 100 rankings, with the cutoff being a high 81 overall, and that would be Zach Edey, Ty Jerome, and Jeremy Grant. Who do you expect to land on the list later this season? So let's break down what we're talking about here. So you've got Gigi Jackson as an 80 overall, which to me is a surprisingly high ranking for Gigi. You've got Cedric Coward as an 80. You've got Zach Edey and Jerome and Grant as 81s. Cameron Boozer is a 79 as a rookie, understandable, but him behind Cedric or Gigi Jackson, mildly surprising. I don't know that I agree with that ranking. Cam Spencer at 79, Jalen Wells is a 79, Isaiah Stewart is a 78, and Olivier Maxence Prosper is a 78. First and foremost, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a deeper team in NBA 2K27. I would argue when your best player is 3 81s and Grant, Jerome, and Edey, and then you have 2 78s as your 9th and 10th man, it's not bad. That tells me that you're throwing consistently above average basketball at your opponents, right? So I count that as a win, personally. Who do I think is going to crack the top 100 first? I think it's going to be Zach Edey. To me, that's a home run. Assuming that Edey is healthy, assuming that he is able to stay on the court for a prolonged period of time. Again, I don't anticipate him playing in back-to-backs. I don't envision him, or at least home and away back-to-backs, maybe home and home or away and away, maybe then, if they're in the same place or something like that. But I envision him playing maybe 68 to 70 games. If that occurs and he's able to log 28 or so minutes a night in those games, I think that it's hard. You would not be able to convince me that he is not an 85 and 86 and 87 in that game. That he wouldn't be a dominant center with an elite rim protection skill and rebounding skill and finishing at the paint and the dunker spot. I think Edey is the one that is best primed to jump. I think Grant and Jerome are probably right where they are long-term, right? And again, as a veteran duo, you know more about what Jeremy Grant and Ty Jerome bring to the table than you do what Zach Edey does, given how limited of a sample size that we had from Edey. So I'm not necessarily mad at any of these rankings. I want to make sure I'm specific about that. I'm not going to rant and rave about how 2K is disrespecting the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't necessarily think that is the truth. What I do think is that the Memphis Grizzlies have a lot of work to do to show not just the 2K community, but the entire NBA at large what they are capable of. Like Cedric Coward and Gigi Jackson being tied as an 80, especially Cedric Coward. you're an all NBA first team member, right? And you're behind Ty Jerome and Jeremy Grant. I would take that as a minor slight. And I don't mean that, again, I love Ty Jerome. I think Jeremy Grant is being significantly undervalued in terms of what he's going to bring to the Memphis Grizzlies. I would not say that Cedric Howard is worse, even if it's just a slight bit. To me, Cedric Howard is the second best player on the team behind Cameron Boozer. I would say Zach Edey is the third best player. Are those three interchangeable? Can you make a logistical argument, a logical one, for any of those three as the top guy? Probably so. But I do believe that Cedric Howard is somebody that, while he may not break through the top 100 first, I think Edey is the most likely to do that because of, in a video game, what counts the most, right? The popping number stats, filling up the box score. I think Edey is most likely to do that. Cedric Howard's game is such that while he's going to help the Memphis Grizzlies be very competitive on both ends of the court, it's not necessarily going to be him putting up video game numbers in a sense that he's going to pop, right? The most aesthetically pleasing game. I don't know that's necessarily going to be the case. Cameron Boozer is another guy that I don't see staying at 79 for long. If we're talking about him in the rookie of the year conversation, that number will go up. I think he is somebody that, again, even more so than a Cedric Howard, is going to have those numbers. He's going to have high rebound per game numbers. He's going to have high assist per game numbers. He's going to blink the flash bulbs of what triggers improvement in terms of rankings in a video game. So Cameron Boozer, I could see being another name that will rise up these rankings pretty quickly. Cam Spencer at 79 is seismic to me. They have him as a better three-point shooter than Ty Jerome, which I don't know that I fully agree with. I'm sure there's some numbers that you could point at that would suggest that Cam Spencer is indeed that high level of a three-point shooter. But Spencer is a 79? We're talking about, and we have talked about on this show, Cam Spencer not being in the rotation. Notice there's no mention of Scottie Pippen Jr. in this top 10. I am very interested in how these rankings eventually get updated, because I don't want to hate on Cam Spencer. I love Cam Spencer. Is he only 2 points worse than Ty Jerome? Is he only a point worse than Cedric Howard? Is he the same overall ranking as Cameron Boozer, the number 3 pick in the 2026 NBA draft? I'm struggling with that. Personally, I'm struggling with that. So I'm not going to get mad about it because, like I said, it's a video game, right? And if you are getting irrationally upset about where your favorite basketball team / players are ranked by a video game in August, that means you are experiencing the dog day doldrums as much as anybody. Not worth it ruining your day or even ruining a minute of your time. But I do think it's a larger reflection of an overall theme, and that is connected to the 2 national televised games. That is connected to all sorts of pieces of this that remind you that the Memphis Grizzlies are back in rebuilding mode. Very few people on the national scale of the NBA are thinking about the Memphis Grizzlies. Very few people nationally want to watch the Memphis Grizzlies, at least by all the different algorithms and data points they use. The Grizzlies are no longer in the spotlight. Those days 4 or 5 years ago when Ja Morant was soaring his highest and they were playing on Christmas and they were in the national limelight, it was Memphis Grizzlies Day for ESPN. That's all gone, for at least for now, maybe forever. We can't take for granted how seismic the Ja Morant era was in terms of eyes on the Memphis Grizzlies product. You can't. Again, you can be mad at how it ended. You can think Ja was selfish. You can think the organization fumbled a lot of those aspects of things. It's a two-way street of bad decision-making. All that can be true. But you have to couple that with the reality that now that that era is over, you're back to what the Memphis Grizzlies were in grit and grind. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And as I always say, you have to let this group figure out who they are organically. I don't like the grit and grind 2.0 conversation. Let them find what their identity is. I want them to relish the opportunity of not being stared at, not having all their little downfalls broken down and negotiated and philosophized about. That to me is valuable. And hopefully they take advantage of it. I think they will. Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. How are you feeling about no Grizzlies in the top 100? I see it as an overall theme. The Grizzlies are not part of the national basketball conversation anymore. I'm okay with it. Are you? Talk it out on X at Joe Mullinax. Let me know in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, going to close this show with something that never should have had to been closed on, but it annoyed me enough that I want to make sure that I get a chance to give my 2 cents on it. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Wayfair. Whether you are refreshing one room, getting ready for a new season, or finally replacing that piece of furniture that you have been putting off, Wayfair makes it easy to find something that fits your home, your style, and your budget. You can shop furniture and decor across a wide range of price points with quality materials and pieces designed to stand up to real life. And with Wayfair Verified, product specialists hand vet select products through a 10-point quality inspection, looking at things like materials, functionality, features, and even how long they take to build. And if you're still trying to narrow down what to buy, Wayfair gives you plenty of real shopper feedback to work with. You can browse more than 20 million verified 5-star reviews, along with real customer photos and feedback to help you shop with more confidence. My biggest issue is I feel like our house is constantly unfinished, right? There's a kitchen that you want to update. There's a deck that needs to be repaired. There's appliances that need to be all sorts of rearranged and refocused, right? How do you decide what looks good in a room? How do you get that information online as best you can? Wayfair allows for you having the opportunity to pull a space together without overthinking it and without feeling overwhelmed about all the different things that need to get done in your home. Join Wayfair Rewards today to get 5% back on every purchase and start saving on your next home upgrade. Head to wayfair.com to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. This is Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, finishing up this edition of the show. Thank you so much for being with me. I missed Michael Cole terribly, as I always do, but I know I will see him later on this week. I know he's got a lot of big things planned for the podcast and his overall coverage over the commercial appeal over the next several days. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. Stick with Locked On Grizzlies as the dog days grind forth. Michael was busy over the weekend in a way that, in my opinion, he never should have to be busy. Okay. I believe it was a Friday afternoon, as a matter of fact, a Friday afternoon conversation. There was a post that had come out earlier in the week, a report from Front Office Sports that had been aggregated by Evan Sittery on X, talking about Brandon Clark's contract not being paid in full to his estate, and how the Grizzlies were not going to be fulfilling the last year of Brandon Clark's deal. Obviously, Brandon Clark, the late Brandon Clark, still terrible to say, rest in peace, and we're thinking and praying for his loved ones still, of course. That is a pretty significant wound for the organization, right? You saw in Summer League, they're wearing the BC pouches. They have a memorial that Zach Edey shared, I believe it was on Instagram, but some form of social media. There's a memorial in the Grizzlies locker room to Brandon Clark. They obviously still have very fresh in their mind the loss of not just a basketball player that was good, not just a teammate that was a part of the organization for several years, back to 2019, also part of that Ja Morant draft class. But he was a wonderful person by the accounts of just about everybody that interacted with him, that shared their story of all of the wonderful things that BC was and did, and not just in and around Memphis, but all of his college stops that he was at, all those sorts of things. So it's obviously fresh for the Grizzlies organization that they're struggling with this, okay? So for this report to come out from Front Office Sports and then Evan Sittery aggregating it, right? And this is an era of aggregation. You hear that a lot. And in fairness, I'm an aggregator here on Locked On Grizzlies from time to time. I read content. I look at social media. I discuss it here on the pod. Not everything is original reporting. And if you look around all of the mediascape, people take a report from somebody else and they build conversations about it. They build content around it. But the important thing to remember is that journalism still matters, right? In organizations like Front Office Sports, individuals like Sittery, they post these things, treating them as content that is accurate to report, and people believe it, and people post about it, And people generate opinions of Memphis. I remember reading through all the different replies, various vile things about this is why Memphis will never win, and this is why this is a crap city, and nobody wants to be there. You shouldn't have a team, all those sorts of things. Dozens upon dozens of those responses I personally looked at, because as anybody in 2026 trying to consume content about my team that I follow, I want to say, is this true? Is this real? But I've been in this business, in the way I've been in it, long enough to understand that if you don't have verified information, if you don't go about your own individual work, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, world news, whatever content you're craving, if you don't go and verify it on your own through additional reporting, verified sources, primary sources, if you're able to access them, or at the very least, additional journalists who have developed reputations over the years, like our very own DeMichael Cole at the Commercial Appeal and, of course, of Locked On Grizzlies. If you don't follow that, you have the possibility of embarrassing yourself and making it clear that you have no idea what you're talking about. And that's exactly what happened here. Thanks to DeMichael Cole and Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian and others. This is from DeMichael at DeMichael C on X. Brandon Clark's contract was protected in case of death. His estate is expected to get the full money that he is owed. This directly refutes a previous report from Front Office Sports. And DeMichael went on, and I'm glad he did, to be honest with you. And he wrote, "It's disappointing when incorrect reports surface that paint Memphis in a negative light, especially when they're amplified without the proper context. The city has already taken a lot. Reporters and aggregators have a responsibility to get the facts right and understand the impact their reporting can have. That's why Front Office Sports' recent report in Evan Sittery's aggregation, after also reporting weeks ago that the Grizzlies would play regular season games in Nashville this season, is frustrating. Friendly reminder, he did say that, and that also did not occur. Criticism is fair, inaccurate reporting isn't. Criticism is fair, inaccurate reporting isn't. And that's life in the media landscape that is 2026. It impacted the Memphis Grizzlies this time. There are people that now have a more negative view of the city of Memphis, of the Grizzlies organization, for a completely erroneous, untrue report that has been disproven by actual journalists actually doing their journalistic job with the integrity that being a journalist of the caliber of Drew and DeMichael suggests. Quick piece of advice. Unless you're 100% sure on what you are reporting, it is probably not in your best interest to report that a National Basketball Association franchise is not going to honor the last year of a player that has passed away, unless you are absolutely sure you've got the goods on that report. Because that crosses a line. That crosses a line into a space with a person that is extremely important to the city, extremely important to the franchise, and everybody that he interacted with in his years with the Memphis Grizzlies. And most importantly, it's important to his friends and family. Bringing attention in a negative way to a name and a person and a legacy that deserves a heck of a lot better than trying to get a bunch of interaction on social media. Rest in peace, Brandon Clark. I am very happy to report, thanks to DeMichael Cole, that his family and his estate will see the extent of his contract in fulfillment, because that's exactly what was going to happen the entire time. Be media literate in 2026. Make sure that you are verifying anything that you read, because there's all sorts of bad actors out there. That's it for this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host for this edition of the show, Joe Mullinax. It's going to be an interesting week here on Locked On Grizzlies. DeMichael Cole has something special cooking up for us. That will be out later on this week. It may not be in that Wednesday slot. Might be a little bit earlier than that. But you will see DeMichael. You will see me. We will be back with you later on this week, and we've got some pretty cool things coming up down the pike here this week at Locked On Grizzlies. So make sure you're with us the next time that an episode drops. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. We, of course, are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. And make sure that now you have made Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. For your second, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Wes, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, your team every single day. Thank you for being with me on this edition of the show. I am Joe Mullinax. Until next time, stay safe out there. Have a great start to your week, and make sure you're right back here with us the next time an episode drops. See ya.